feel valued and do their best work. In each episode, we explore the topics of diversity and inclusion, cultural change, and inclusive leadership development. For more information, visit our website at www.unlearninglabels.com. There you can read our blog articles, listen to previous episodes, and contact us to work with us directly. Now, enjoy the show. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Unlearning Labels podcast. Hi, Peter. Hi, Mira.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey.
I'm really excited about our topic today. You know, I really, I enjoyed reading the article you posted the other day, Peter, on LinkedIn about Kellogg and what they're offering as a new benefit to their female employees, you know, and even in the article, you know, it talks about creating allies. So today we're going to explore what it looks like to create allyship in the workplace. And, you know, this is from a place of upholding the policies, especially when they're new and especially when it's about changing the company culture. So since you posted the article, tell us more about that. What prompted you to post that? Like when you read it, what came up for you?
Can't even remember what I posted on. I'm joking. No, it was really a call to action. I mean, it's stuff that all three of us are passionate about, right? It's just that I don't want to denigrate any one company, whether it's Kellogg's or whoever shares this kind of thing with the media. But I'm just saying to all these leadership teams and people who make these decisions, just to be careful about, you know, whether it looks like cheerleading from a certain standing point, because I don't work for that company and, you know, I'm not finger pointing, just to be clear. But what I was trying to share is that it's great that companies are becoming more aware of what their employees' needs are and listening to their employees. That's only a good thing. And I know that, you know, it shouldn't have took COVID and some of the things we've gone through in the last 23 months or whatever. But, you know, that aside, I'm glad that it's actually happening, right? But what we're seeing quite often is that in our work, at least, there's a misalignment between what a company's saying. Look at us, we're great. Look at all of the, I wouldn't say benefits, but they're saying, you know, now we're paying paid time off for these things. But I got really curious. So the question for me was, what were you doing before? You know, God forbid if someone had, you know, one of these things that they listed, what were they doing before? Saying, sorry, you can't have time off. And then if you're a single parent, were you put under, you know, that massive pressure to go, oh, I've got to decide between being with my family and grieving or actually being in work and not being at my best and still having the pressure of coming in, you know? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the, it's one thing is putting the policy, which is great, because then there are some guidelines over there. But if leaders, if managers in the company are not developed enough to be able to implement it themselves and actually use it for their people, then it could be double-edged sword, because then you say, oh, I've got a policy and therefore I don't need to do anything else. So in addition to having a policy which is useful, obviously, develop leaders to be able to do what you actually want them to do. No?
I mean, someone mentioned it. I mean, it was good that it raised awareness. There was like 27,000 plus views on it, which is great. It's not for my ego, by the way. I really want us to, you know, why are we doing this podcast and why do we do these lives? We're literally trying to spread awareness, and hopefully people will just reflect on it and see if they can actually make some positive change. And I guess that's a good segue into allyship, right? That when I saw what was written, and again, I'm not blaming the company, but it looked like it was putting it back on the employees. it is everyone's responsibility to be an ally to each other. But correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, in my roles as leaders in the past, I didn't really have to explain that to my team. They had each other's backs. It was usually other managers that were misaligned with HR policy, and that was causing a lack of trust and and causing me problems, because when some of my peers weren't in the office or they weren't here, people were coming to me really uncomfortably and saying, please, can you help me? And I was quite shocked and surprised that they weren't getting the support that they deserved. And also it was in the policies in all of the companies I worked for that after you make a decision about this, yes, it can be paid, etc., etc. But sadly, for whatever reason, some people were just not getting the same amount of care and attention. And sadly, some people were told, no, sorry, you can't have that time off. Even though I was giving it to anyone where I saw fit. And if I'm honest, I actually used to get into trouble sometimes with HR and even my bosses, because they were like, why did you sign that off? And I'm like, well, first and foremost, that person's grieving or they're having a horrible time. So my priority was to make sure they felt safe. And, I was listening to them, and crucially, they could be with the family. Second,
your priority wasn't to ask a death certificate from them.
Yeah,
exactly. And for those of you who didn't read the article, we did post the article with the announcement of us going live. I just want to read the quote that we're all referring to. In the article, it says, we want to create a culture where people feel psychologically safe. So we'll encourage colleagues to be allies to others impacted by these issues. And so it's almost like they're putting the onus on the populace, right? Instead of on the managers. And so I want to dive a little bit more into your comment, Mira, about leadership development. So what would it take for companies to change the culture from the top down? What kind of leadership development are we talking about?
Well, probably very different from what it used to be. It's, when it's one thing that comes to mind. It's, when we talk about flat hierarchies in the companies, we talk about, people think it's everybody's on the same level. Everybody have different responsibilities, and we need to be aware of it. And there is a person that is managing the team, and there is a person that is in the team. But what it means flat, it means that we are all the same. We are all same people. We all have human emotions, human behavior, human understanding, human realities. So when this is something where I see new leadership development in, that people need to understand that because they're leaders, they're there, have a certain role to support their people, not to beat them up and pinpoint what they haven't done. And so it's more about development and being there for them, being a person of support and person that is going to help you develop and grow in that company, and not just somebody who's going to bring rules in, which often leadership or actually management was in the past. But I think Peter can say a little bit more about that, I think.
I see the skills that they should be in high demand. At least they are in our business, right? These are the things that our clients are coming to. But sadly, quite often companies are box ticking. So I was trying to explain it, and it's difficult, right? Because you can only be as clear as you can. It's your best guess. And then so I ended up explaining, especially in this post, sometimes in the comments, that it's like greenwashing when it comes to climate change. It's a corporation or a company saying one thing, but then the actions of their leaders are misaligned with what's been said outside of that. And this is what denigrates trust in companies. This is why employees are leaving, because of the great resignation. And you hit the nail on the head, Cordelia, when you said, it looks to me like it's been pushed back on the whole employee population. And in many ways, it is correct. I would love everyone to be a self-leader. That's my dream for the future. Leadership development should be for everyone. But what we're saying here is that it sounds like the leaders and the people managers are washing their hands and saying, well, it's down to you as an employee. But I would actually push back on that. So I'll give you a rock solid example. If if I'm in a team and the person above me is the person that can make decisions and says no, then even though I'm an ally to the people in my team, I don't have autonomy or any decision-making power to sign off my colleagues' paid leave. So therefore, I can have the back and say, and I'm really sorry that you're going through such a challenging situation. But it really is down to the leaders and the leadership team, and crucially, HR, to make sure that that alignment is to the policy. And quite often what we see when we work with leaders and leadership teams, there's no due diligence, there's no checking up on this. And again, it's not about blaming managers and getting them into trouble and issuing written warnings and stuff like that, far from it. But it's just saying, how much love, care, and attention. And going back to the soft skills, what I see missing is listening. So listening to understand, how you communicate to your team when there's challenging situations, because quite often my colleagues used to be super uncomfortable or fearful and therefore not really want to get into that. And if someone talks about, something really challenging with the family, they were just so uncomfortable. They didn't have the right skills or knowledge to be able to, navigate those kind of conversations. And the other one is just knowing that if you're paid to be a leader, right, you are responsible for making those decisions, regardless of what HR and anyone else is saying. If your duty of care is to look after your team, keep them safe, and for them to feel included and like they can actually come to you in a safe environment and ask for help, then like or not, if you're paid to be the boss, it's on you, and that's what I'm not hearing in a lot of these cheerleading, well done us as a company. I don't hear them saying in parallel, we're going to make sure it's aligned. So in real life, when these situations happen, we're now training our leaders 24/7, in experiential learning and making sure that they can make these tough decisions, but also be able to have these conversations and show a bit of compassion,
Yeah. I just want to welcome those of you watching from Facebook and LinkedIn. Thank you very much, Golam, for joining us. And he has shared that he believes this is a good discussion. And if during the course of our conversation you have any questions, please put them in the comments, or if you have experienced something that we're talking about. So in this case, we're talking about there was a major policy change for a corporation. So if you work for a company who's, a lot of companies are changing policies right now, right? So if you're working for a company, and you don't have to say the name of the company that is changing policy, and maybe you're a manager, or you're in the leadership team, or you're in HR, and you want to, give some ideas to help people who are in your same position, or if there's some things that you're struggling with and you have questions for us, please put it in the comments. So, just to summarize where we are right now, our discussion is based off of an article that Peter recently posted on LinkedIn from the BBC about a policy change affecting women. The female employees are now able to get paid time off. Just listen to this: paid time off for miscarriages or issues with menopause. I mean, it's like, our question is, what were they doing before, and why wasn't it worthy of paid time off before? And so one thing I'm going to throw into the mix, the BBC is for based in UK. In the United States, we have something called what is it called? The Medical Family Leave Act. And it is, you don't get paid time off. You can get 12 weeks off and have your job guaranteed, right? Or even, I think it goes up to 12 months with your job guaranteed, but you couldn't get paid for that, right? Yeah, isn't that crazy? So I'm really curious for anybody who works for an American company that, again, it's like a basic human right. And I always thought that was so strange. It's like, okay, I can get time off, but I can't get paid. However, I'm guaranteed that I get a job even if I'm gone for a year. But how am I going to live? And part of the discussion that we've had under this article is, it is a basic human right to be able to grieve, right? And even though it's not an older person, it could be from miscarriage. And this is a personal situation for me because I actually had a couple of miscarriages when I was working in corporate, and I wasn't, you know, I I did take PTO, right, which is different from like having actual medical paid time off. So I was taking from my vacation time to take care of something that was medical, and on another level could even be considered bereavement.
Mhm.
So is that a policy that companies need to look at too? Would
Mm.
having a miscarriage constitute bereavement?
Mm. It's interesting, you know what just crossed my mind with as I heard you talking? It looks to me that these were in the past privileges of people to actually grieve, to actually take time off, because they could maybe be not paid because maybe a spouse was working and they had a good salary, or they could have a good, you know, some savings to help them out or take a loan or something. But that's not the case for big majority of population, isn't it?
So
So mm,
you're saying like it's an assumption when it's a female employee that they have someone taking care of them. Is that what you're saying?
probably probably probably
Yeah, it's an interesting take on it because, yeah, you know, quite often people do innocently and knowingly make assumptions about their colleagues. You know, oh, yeah, they're going to be okay because they've got this going on in the family or this and that. But we just never know, right? So what we want people to reflect on is, you know, really listen to people, really have their back and say, look, you know, whatever's going on for you, I'm here. You know, you don't need to explain it, but don't worry. Go and deal with it right now and check in with us and we'll sort this out. You know, that's what I want to employees to start saying to their employees. And the only way that's going to happen is if the leaders who are looking after these teams get development and it's ongoing.
yeah
Yes.
I,
I
I
mean,
see.
soft skills are a thing, but I mean, this is a good point. One of our viewers on LinkedIn, Omeima, salam alaikum, she's saying, I saw the article about the women and I feel that like there's still discrimination for women, especially when it comes to having children, etc. I don't understand the rules and the regulations for women regarding pregnancy, miscarriage, and death. And she goes on to say, I think we as people need to talk to our politicians and change these rules and regulations.
Mm.
So is it something that shouldn't be within the corporation? It should be enforced from government? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean it's a tricky one, right? Because you want to give autonomy to the private sector, et cetera, and you don't want to clog them down. But uh, I mean, this is different. But I posted something today about Portugal really stopping remote workers from working after the fact. So they're banning companies from sending emails and contacting them by sending messages after their official hours end, which I think is a really good step. So I think there are times when it becomes government policy, and I think it's good for society. And as you said, Cordelia, it's quite shocking for me because I have lots of, you know, we have lots of American friends, right? And when they tell me how little working rights they've always had, even though things have evolved, and like we said, there are some positive changes. And just to point back to this article, sadly, this was only talking about their UK operation. So it wasn't talking about And again, I might be wrong. So anyone who's read the article or knows a bit more detail, or, you know, if anyone works for Kellogg's, maybe they can share that. But from what I could see from that BBC article, it was pointing to the UK operation as far as I could see. So sadly, because governments don't agree on certain things at the best of times, look at climate change, what I would love to see, because we are truly global, is seeing truly global standards for employees. And this could be a massive, you know, call to action about aligning these things. But yeah, they're so out of whack, even in Europe, between German labor law and the UK labor law and other, you know, European countries. It's totally different. Although what I've seen in general is that European labor law is a lot stronger and it seems to be a lot more flexible for employers, or at least that's been our experience.
Yeah, I see more comments there.
Yeah, Elizabeth also on LinkedIn, she's saying US-based national Women's Law Center in January 2021 tallied a net loss of 5.4 million jobs among women
Wow.
since February 2020, or more than half of all jobs lost since the pandemic began. And she goes on to say 1 in 4 women are considering leaving the workforce or downshifting their careers versus 1 in 5 men. While all women have been impacted, 3 major groups have experienced some of the largest changes: working mothers, mother and senior management positions, and Black women. And that's a report from McKinsey, the pandemic gender analysis. So, oh, I missed a comment. Okay. Right. I think women are like, enough is enough. And the pandemic showed how little companies care, So, I mean, there's a lot of statistics behind this. And even like in September, I did a couple of talks myself, specifically to the plight of Black women. 1 in 4 Black women live below the poverty line, and they are usually the breadwinners of their households. And so, to be, and I think the other statistic was like almost 28% of them are in service-based industries, like, or healthcare industries where they're nurses. So they're actually literally putting their lives on the line because like for a whole year, there was no vaccine. Right. And now, interestingly enough, again, I know some Black female nurses in New York in particular, and that was like a hotbed for, there are a lot of cases of COVID there. And now they're losing their jobs because they won't get the vaccine. And they're just like, I'm still alive. Right.
Yeah, it's a good chance that they're good with the virus.
I'll just go back to what you said, Cordelia. Yeah, it's interesting that one thing I've seen that is a global challenge is that if you're in a role that's service related, where you're on front line and, regardless of whether it's putting your life at risk, if you're in a service role, let's be honest, you do have less flexibility and wiggle room down to the shifts, the odd hours, and the challenges that come from being in those roles, right? And the sad thing is, it's usually those people that are exposed on lower wages, and they get much less flexibility than executives who maybe just do a 9-to-5 job. And this is what I would like to see, that misalignment, that, I really see it as everyone's rights. If you're employed by a company, the company's duty of care should be to allow you time off if something happens that's completely out of your control. And I know that our HR colleagues, we've had this discussion for years now about policy, needs to be in alignment. So, if a line manager has somewhere to go, okay, well, if I'm being fair, it says that it's written, so therefore I can do it. But sadly, I still don't see people taking the action, even if it's written in the HR policy.
Yes. So what has to happen?
Yeah.
What do we need to do? How do we need to develop managers and leaders so that they would actually take that power that they have and used it in a good way? Because and I think lots of it is because, first of all, we have this skewed idea that leadership is I'm in charge of everything, I'm in control of everything, I need to know everything, I can't make a mistake. If something goes like, and then they're scared for their jobs. I think that's also one of the reasons managers are, if they have kids, if they have families, if they are breadwinners, they're humans like everybody else. If they don't have support of their managers and leaders, how are they going to then support their own? Unless they are, like Peter used to be, he just didn't care.
So, it looks like everyone has to be a renegade like Peter, basically.
Well, no, here's the
What's
thing.
what's there to be afraid of?
No, but I mean, it wasn't that I did anything out of the ordinary. It just didn't make sense. So here's the thing, right? If your people see you as a leader, it's not for me to say, oh, I'm a leader. I was given the role of a people manager, right? If people give you feedback that they feel safe, and actually it's not even a said thing. If people are coming to you, and I'm curious because I was always, why is it gone quiet? if people are willing to come to you with challenges, with problems when things go wrong, then I would hazard a guess, just to any managers, listening, watching this, you're probably doing a good job. And that's what we want to see more of. It's great that HR are changing policy and procedure, and they should be owning that part of the jigsaw. But what I don't see is that managers are supported to make challenging and tough decisions. And sometimes it's ad hoc. For me, any decision that happens outside of work is case by case. And I will trust first and then worry about the implications. And in the rare occasion, and honestly, in my career, it was super rare, if someone does take liberties and doesn't, they're not so truth or bending the truth, and it's not really a proper calamity, then you do what all good managers do. You give that person feedback, you do it in a controlled way, and you course correct that behavior by having an open discussion in a safe way with that employee. But I can honestly say that employers seem to be really fearful about allowing people paid time off. And it's not that it's going to open the floodgate. In every company I work for, or the companies that we support that just do these things and say, right, we'll offer that full flexibility, they actually save more money. Because I can honestly tell you that if you're not allowed to do something, employees find a way. They will go on the sick for months with high stress and burnout because they're, the people are running the company weren't listening to them. The biggest problem with companies is they ignore their employees, or they marginalize them, like you said, Cordelia, because, they don't realize that maybe you're a single parent and you have no other option but to deal with whatever calamities happen, but you're not given any love, care and attention. And then you end up having to make a tough decision and coming in and doing a double shift or whatever it is,
So yeah, I mean, I think the top leadership team needs to be they need to be developed leaders, and then they need to support. So everybody needs to support people that they are in care of, that they are leading. And if that happens, it's great. You cannot expect from a person that is doing the work to do their best work if they don't have support from their manager, and their manager have support from their manager. So it needs to be so. When there is a leadership development in the company, I think every company would have to do that for all their stuff. But okay, let's start with leaders, is that they know what to do, how to deal with people, how to feel them to be safe, to be able to make best decisions.
So the allyship, it sounds like, starts from the top down, right? Because if you are supporting, like if the executive leadership team is supporting the middle management leadership team, right, then there's already a safety net, right? Like, that they have your back. And of course, the soft skills will automatically come into play because it's leading by example, actually, exactly. Right? Yeah. And so there's been quite a discussion going on here between Umaima and Elizabeth. So let's catch up with what's happening. So, okay, Elizabeth is saying, to support that the point that Cordelia is making, on the one hand, women are highly concentrated in sectors that are expected to suffer high rates of unemployment in 2020, including hospitality, food services, and retail. As of September 2020, only 53% of the U.S. adult Black population was employed, compared with 57% of the corresponding white population. 2 and 39% of jobs held by Black workers were vulnerable as a result of COVID crisis, compared to 34%. And actually, it doesn't show the whole thing, the whole comment. So like if you're watching from LinkedIn, you can go and read her full comment. And so Umaima has shared an article from the AmericanProgress.org about COVID-19. Unfortunately, a lot of women had to stop working due to childcare. Yeah, we are very clear on that. And the other side of that is actually a lot of women were able to start businesses, but that's a whole nother issue.
Can I just say, don't get me started on childcare. Mira and I don't have children. We have lots of nieces and nephews, by the way, for people watching this. But in my career, I was always in the middle of a crisis about childcare. And again, just to be clear, if the managers given enough autonomy, you make those decisions, and then you deal with HR, and you have those discussions and going back and forth. But just crucially for people listening right now, it shouldn't be the employee that's in the middle. So many times I've seen people already stressed and burnt out, already having problems that was no fault of the company, with childcare issues, and worried about whether they can get their kids the care they needed while they're doing a full-time job, only for them to come into work and ask for one day off, and there'll be a whole back and forth, and then be left hanging for a week. It's insane. So I get those statistics, and thank you for sharing. But I really, why are we having this conversation? We just want companies now to just be flexible. And that's all it is, right? If everyone's been an ally in the company, and as you say, Cordelia, if it starts to trickle top down, and the senior management team are constantly sharing and being transparent and saying, look, I'm a father too, I want to make sure that every parent in the company gets what they deserve. And then, it comes from the bottom up, because people suddenly start to feel safe and included, and then they see their line manager in alignment with what the company policies like and what the values of the company are.
And people are then more flexible as well. If they know that they have, if I have a problem, I'll have help, then I'm willing to do something else for the company or for my manager or for my team that I otherwise wouldn't, because I would be pissed off and angry and resent and I would resent it. So it's there is a way to do things much easier. We just need to be open to seeing it, and we need to get out of this old way of doing things, because we'll have to eventually. It's just who's going to do it sooner.
And if you want to stop the misalignment, all I did, and this was simple, it doesn't cost money, just get curious about the teams. What she said about silos, it was really
Zakia,
true. What Zakia said about, we all get into situations where we're blinkered and we sit in our silos and all of that. But if you start to be curious about the team next to you, are they getting the love, care, and attention the same as your team? And be an ally and have the back of your peers. And then that starts to ripple outwards. That's what we're saying. But to really do that, you need to have that awareness in the first place. And you need to have the skills and experience to be able to drive that forward.
Yeah. And that's why we really, sorry.
No, I mean, I was just going to add to that. By the way, welcome, Zakia. And
welcome.
So I guess what it sounds like is you're saying, like, even within like the middle management level leadership, they need to work and be allies for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're suggesting, Peter? Okay.
Yeah, and involve HR, because quite often HR get blamed for everything. Let's be honest, in organizations. So I know
they're the scapegoat,
and they're automatically in a defense position.
So quite often they feel like they're not welcome. But in the companies I worked for, where it did work, is when everyone from all of these representative departments, these stakeholders, were constantly being seen. They were visible and accessible to all the employees, and they were doing such things as town halls. But again, just to be clear, not to tick a box, they were generally coming to the floor and saying, look, we changed the policy, but we're just curious, is it working for you? And again, it's not to point fingers or blame or anything else, because let's be honest, no policy or procedure will ever be perfect. It's about being able to get that moving through the whole population by talking about it, by having transparency, and just being open and honest. For me as a leader, I would say, look, this is never going to be perfect, team. They've changed it and I'll support it. But if it's not working for you, put your hand up. Please let me know, give me feedback, and I'll take it up the chain. And if HR and people above me did that, it was a win-win,
So we have a question. Do you feel like it has to do with culture of a country or companies regarding rules and regulations for pregnancy, miscarriage, death, and childcare?
It's interesting. I see two things happening. Sometimes, yes, the culture, the country, but now it's not so much anymore, because it's also globalized and we are also connected. So I think countries take ideas from different countries as well. So it kind of goes from one to another. In the past, probably it was more segregated, more, this country does this and this country does that. But typically, I think Europe was more, they had much more open policies. I remember, back home, I think it's now 11 or 12 months for a childcare, but it's only for a woman. It's still not for a father. They
Father,
cannot
wow.
split half.
It's
But in
only Finland
Germany,
that does that, isn't it?
Germany does it as well.
Germany, the Nordic
Oh,
countries have
okay.
been very good and leading the way, in fact. And I'm sure there are more, so sorry if we didn't include
Yeah.
something. And if you're from that country, please share your experience of it. The other thing as well is, Mira and I lived in the Middle East for years, Mira decades as well. And yeah, there are some cultural things thrown in the mix. So there are challenges with cultural norms in certain countries. But even in the UAE, for example, where Mira and I worked for a long time, we've seen a really positive shift of late. And companies are becoming a lot more self-aware about mental health and about benefits and what constitutes making sure employees get exactly what they need.
Yeah, the UAE was taking a lot of policies from American corporate system. So they would have very similar rules and regulations for women. After delivery, you pretty much go to work straight away. But they were giving them, you could have hour longer break or more breaks, or leave earlier, have shorter working hours for a while you were breastfeeding, so you could go home and breastfeed, which didn't really make sense to me if you live far away. But
yeah,
but they're borrowing. Depends of how old is corporate culture in that country.
I like what Elizabeth is saying there. I totally agree. I think all companies need to be more flexible, and also the leaders. And we all, every individual human, if you want to be an ally, we all have to bear some responsibility. But I don't have the figures there, and Mira and I do a lot of research, and Cordelia will share that with you as well. That I'd hazard a guess that if you're actually doing the right thing, it will cost you a lot less. So, for example, like I said before, my experience was that if I heard a no and people weren't getting the care and attention or time off or flexibility, they would, as you pointed to before, Cordelia, people just leave because they don't have any choice, or they find a way around it and they start to bend the truth, or they stop to actually communicate with you, sadly, because they don't feel safe enough to even share some of the challenges that they're going through. And that's what we're pointing to, that if you don't create the right conditions for people to have that flexibility, it will cost you your top line in the future, 100%. In high sickness, burnout, stress, mental health problems, you name it. And there's a massive cost implication for that. And there's a lot of data coming out right now.
Yeah, and sadly, it is transactional, but that's how we operate in the culture, working culture as it is right now. So even us to sell our products, we need to talk about the money at the end of the day. But it doesn't have to be all bad. I just think it's that it is at the moment like this. Hopefully we will change it, and it's going to get changed. I hope sooner than later. But yeah, that is as it is right now.
Yeah. So this we're getting a lot of feedback about the fact that we did bring in mental health. Zakia was saying, welcome Al Said, and thank you, Mema, for that. So actually, Peter, Mira, and I started this podcast January of this year. So it's a collaborative effort. And we, like Peter was saying, throughout, this is really to bring awareness of these issues that people are experiencing every day globally. The beauty of our collaboration is I'm in the US and they're in Europe. And so, with Peter being from the UK originally and Mira from, well, what is your country called now, right? We'll you know what I mean? It's like weird, right? But they live in Germany, but they have referenced they lived many years in the UAE. I'm making a joke because she's from Serbia. So, but so many things have been changing, in the past decades. So the great thing about our collaboration is we have a truly global perspective, and, constantly doing research between the corporate clients they work with, and the individual leaders that I work with. And so the podcast is really to showcase the issues and, get more awareness around that. So thank you for participating. For those of you who have joined us, Elizabeth, Omema, Zakia, Elsa, and for the statistics that you added to the conversation. So that's nice. Now that we know that, we'll research less. No, I'm just kidding.
we just host a podcast and then ask for statistics. But you know what crossed my mind when you were talking now, Cordelia, how much mental health and stress levels in the companies add to lack of allyship and lack of any awareness. When we are stressed out, we can't think. We are self-centered and we are focused on ourselves only, because we are in survival mode. So if somebody else is dying next to me, I won't notice it. Because I will be in survival mode, protecting my own life. And that's what stress is. I'm not even exaggerating. This is how it is. And, just think, anybody who is listening this, think of the time when you were really stressed in your life or at work. I mean, what could you think of? Who have you noticed? With whom did you talk? You could only talk about what was bothering you, and you could only think about that. So it's really important that we, when we do leadership development, one of the first things we do is actually work on personal resilience, stress reduction, understanding how they function and all of that, leaders. And then the second thing comes the interaction with other people, because how you feel and who you are in that moment really affects everything else that you do.
Yeah, and if the leadership team doesn't feel safe, no one is going to feel safe, right? Because that trickles down with not trusting their employees. And as we pointed to at the start of the conversation, it's like, oh, wow, look at us. We're allowing paid off time. And it's like, wow, you didn't trust your employees before that?
Right. But what I find interesting is, like, every single one, no matter what topic we cover, we always come back to this.
Yeah.
Self-care, right? Self-care, self-nurturing. If you trust yourself, if you're taking good care of yourself, then you're going to behave that way with your staff and your team. It's just the way it is. We already have a question. Oh, go ahead. I'll wait until you talk.
No, I just said, and then when you understand how that works, then you will be more forgiving and more understanding of people around you who don't see it. And you will then be able to help them. Otherwise, you won't.
Yeah. So what topics do you plan to tackle in 2022? Shall we reveal, or are we going to hold that back?
I don't think we are holding anything back, but what would be interesting of what people think it would be interesting and important as well.
Yeah, that's great. So here's Zakia. Why don't you share what topics you would like us to tackle? We really want to support our viewers and listeners. So the podcast is also on iTunes and Spotify and Anchor. And so if you're only listening and you're not viewing on our YouTube channel, you can still let us know what topics you would like us to tackle for 2022. There's so many things, there are still a lot of remote working environments. Now we were talking briefly about what's happening in Portugal, and there's also hybrid working environments, so there's some nuances in those new kind of environments, and how can you even show up as an ally in that, situation, and what does that look like? But, definitely share, if you're watching on LinkedIn or Facebook, or you can share in the comments what topics you would like us to cover.
Yeah, much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Also, I just want to mention this before we close out. We also do blog articles on our website, which is unlearninglabels.com. And if you've benefited from this discussion, do share this with someone else. Sharing is loving, and that's what we need more of in the world. More about cultural diversity, tips for effective hybrid and remote environment, inclusive recruiting practices. Yeah, those are really great topics. Thank you for that.
I mean, as we mentioned, Portugal have made a big move and changed some working rights rules around remote working. So maybe that's a good segue into something we will discuss in more detail. I know we've talked about hybrid and remote working in a few different episodes, but we can go much deeper around, for example, if the leader goes home early and shows that, this is the way forward, you can't burn the midnight oil every day, then it allows people, who need to spend crucial time with the family, or maybe they're just tired, to actually go home. And, it's stuff like this. So to see a whole country put that into written labor law, that warms my heart. And I hope to see other countries follow suit. That would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be perfect. So any closing remarks, Mira?
No. I think I've said everything I had to say so far.
Yeah,
but
so
yeah,
I just want to say
I'm really happy to see how many comments and people are listening. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, in closing, to create a culture of allyship within your leadership team, soft skills are very important. Leadership development is super important. And taking responsibility by starting out with listening is where we begin. So I forgot she grew up in Germany. So so thank you for viewing and listening. And like I said, sharing is loving. And we'll see you next Wednesday with another topic. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Unlearning Labels podcast. If you would like help addressing any of the topics we explored during the show, such as diversity and inclusion, cultural change, or inclusive leadership development, contact us at www.unlearninglabels.com. Thank you, and sharing is